Christy might be one of the strangest experiences I've had in a theater this year. For nearly an hour, it's genuinely rough. Direction, pacing, characters, everything feels off. It's bad till it isn't, because that last 25% doesn't just save the movie. It exposes what the first 75% was trying to be all along, and that shift changes everything. Directed by Merritt Wever, the movie is set up like an underdog sports film, but plays out more like a character study that forgot to breathe. The directing feels technically fine, but emotionally disconnected. Scenes start halfway through conversations, skip over emotional beats, and end mid-reaction in some cases. There is this reoccurring sense that every human moment was trimmed to keep the runtime tight, and that's only backed up by the rumor from the post-production team, which was that the studio cut nearly 18 minutes of the transitional footage between emotional scenes, worried the pacing might feel slow. Ironically, that cut made the film feel faster, but vastly emptier. Sydney Sweeney stars as Christy, a young bisexual boxer struggling through discrimination and family tension, but the film treats those struggles as the same, because every obstacle for Christy in the first 75% of the film traces back to one trait, being bi, which flattens her character into a single trait rather than a complex person. Ben Foster, who plays James, somehow becomes our main instead for the first 75% because he actually feels like the most lived-in character in this world. He has the most realistic choices and actions, which is all the more horrifying knowing how the movie goes on to end. And it makes sense because Ben Foster actually trained with the retired lightweight champion Paula Cook for 3 months before filming, and Sydney Sweeney reportedly joined late and only completed around 4 weeks of training, which explains some of the physical mismatches people might see on screen. For all of its flaws, Christy never stalls. Scenes whip by so quickly that even when nothing meaningful happens, something is always happening, a weirdly tolerable kind of bad. That relentless movement is what sets up the turnaround later. The film keeps flooring the gas and its momentum to make that eventual crash so much more powerful. But here's the thing, that speed and emptiness kind of serves that purpose. The film's goal wasn't realism, it was almost desensitization for the first 75% of the film. It's almost like it wants you numb when the attempted murder scene hits, because that's when Christy finally wakes up as well. This is where my rating system kind of broke, because the first 75% is a 4 out of 10 for me. The last quarter, a solid 7, maybe even an 8 out of 10. Everything suddenly clicks, the directing slows, the camera widens, the writing sharpens. For once, it feels like people, not just actors, reporting a scene. It's interesting how much one sequence can flip the entire film. The attempted murder scene isn't just a tonal shift, it's a complete filmmaking overhaul. A character shift, an editing shift, a pacing shift. The cuts breathe. The score starts adding to the scene instead of distracting you from it. The editor, Lucas Schenk, reportedly regraded the final 20 minutes himself using an experimental LUT, which is just color grading, meant for documentary footage, not fiction. That's why the ending even looks different outside of all of the other things that also change alongside of it. What really eeks me is Sydney Sweeney herself finally becomes human once the movie hurts her character enough. The glazed, disconnected delivery that felt so wrong earlier suddenly works. Now it makes sense that she's kind of glazed over, she's exhausted, she's broken. It's now believable the way that she's acting as this character. It's almost as if the first 3/4 of her were acting just purely so that the last quarter could be earned. The transformation of the last 25% of the movie doesn't just rescue the movie, it entirely explains it. The film uses its own weaknesses as the setup, but did it have to? It could have been good through and through for that first 75 as well, if they just let those shots breathe and had them drawn out. Let us see the reactions to the characters and what they're experiencing. I wonder how important those 18 minutes of transitional footage really could have added to this film. Even the ending teases like a redemption, only to fade to black right before the boxing match. It's an entire build-up. She's finally coming back into the scene after having the attempt on her life. The last 25% is exceptionally paced. It feels like we're building up to this final thing, and then it just fades to black. It's like we never even got the chance. It's like the film ran out of confidence at the end, which it's interesting enough to find out that the fight was actually all choreographed. It was shot, and it was placed as the final scene. However, it was cut because the studio head wanted the movie to end in a quote-unquote philosophically unresolved way, which I'm usually down for in these types of changes. Instead of having her comeback story be this everything that plays out like a big fairy tale to instead end in a different way, I'm all for that. A fade to black after so much buildup, is that really the best option that we have? So it leaves me torn. Does the last 25% of the movie actually justify the 75% of just absolute emptiness? Yeah, kinda. The last act kind of pays off the film's accidental experience in patience, and I'm curious to see what what y'all felt. Did that switch work for you, or have you already checked out before that even got the chance? Because when I saw the screening of it in the theater with everyone was quiet for the first 75, and then once that attempted murder scene happens, people are gasping, laughing, feeling what the movie wants them to feel, as if it had that all along and yet just never actually added it to the beginning part. Christy is bad until it isn't, but is it worth the wait for you? Let me know in the comments if you've gotten to see it.